That's what I mean. That's what's so good about rugby.
Big win for Australia. What were your thoughts?
Look, I think World Cups are a very different animal. Especially Eddie only coming in, I think 6 months, 7 months before the tournament. If you look at most of the other teams, they've been together for 4 years. Building to the World Cup. Look, I watch a lot of rugby in Australia, and the thing that sort of stood out for me early on was we need a goal kicker. World Cups are won by number 10s. You got Michael 91, Grant Fox 87. Then you had Johnny. That was 90, 91, 95. Joel Stransky, Matt Burke. And Johnny. So you've had all these guys, and it was a bit concerning that Australia really, Quade Cooper's a bit of a goal kicker. Young Gordon's a young guy, and I'm sitting there going, okay, well, Donaldson's obviously a very good player. He plays at Randwick where I used to play, and I spoke to his dad a few times last year, and he, then, I don't know if in Australia they said, oh, shock selection, Donaldson. I'm going, well, not really, because he's actually a very good player. He's a 10, 15. And like Ford, he took the spotlight off everybody and performed. And that's what you need. And I think that the first half was pretty good. But again, when you play Georgia, you should be winning by 50 points. What you need to do, I mean, the unfortunate thing in this World Cup, you've got 4 of the best teams end up in the quarters on one side of the draw. So realistically, you're not going to get the best 2 teams in the Rugby World Cup final.
This might be one of the first times we have 3 Northern Hemisphere sides actually in a semi-final. So, like, is that something that you can see happening, or is it you still expect the Southern Hemisphere sides to come through? Or
yeah, well, I think that obviously Ireland perform. Ireland, South Africa. Then you've got, I thought Scotland played pretty well against South Africa. It wasn't a great game, but Scotland were more about defence instead of attack. And the interesting thing is when you watch World Cups are won by teams, not individuals. And the All Blacks against France, again, looks like they've got a game plan, but no B game plan. And if you watch that game, they looked lost. The guys who came on didn't really add any spice to the game. They just did their job. The French, obviously, the style of rugby is great. I think the skill factor they show, they're miles ahead at the moment. I just think that again, why do we do a draw like 18 months or 16 months out from a Rugby World Cup? It is bizarre, because after a couple of weeks ago, Australia went to number 9th in the world. Now they're number 7th. So on one part of the draw, you've got Ireland, New Zealand, Scotland, and France. On one side, they're the top 4 countries in the world. Then on the other side, you've got 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. Like, it's bizarre. That's not how you have a World Cup. You're supposed to have the 2 best teams play. But again, that you just got to suck it up and play. But at the moment, it could end up that way, which obviously would probably suit the Northern Hemisphere because they've only won 1 World Cup out of all the World Cups. So it's probably the only way that they're going to try and win another one.
One of the most informed sides in the world is, of course, Ireland. Now, I think they've won 13 or 14 in a row now. And also they look dominant. Yes, it was sort of maybe against a sort of a tier 2 side, but a lot of people were sort of putting them down as 4th favourites to win. What's your sort of thoughts on that?
Again, if you look at Ireland, they're very, very good at defence. They're a defensive team, and this is one of my things I don't like about the modern game. It's more about defence and attack. A lot of teams, you very rarely see, the fullback chime in the back line anymore and gives the ball to the winger and score tries. It's a very different game. And Ireland's game is, they don't compete on the grounds. So if you're playing the All Blacks, which they did last year in New Zealand, All Blacks had 4 players in the ground. The Irish had no one. So basically, you got 11 v 15. That's how they play. And it'll be interesting to see what happens if Ireland's behind in a game. How they're going to change their game plan, because I don't think they've got a game plan B either. If you look like most of these teams, they're all very structured and you know exactly what they're going to do. They all do the same moves. And I think I used an analogy in one of my other articles is, so you're a batsman, you're out there batting, you're a good batsman, and then every over the coach comes out with a new pair of gloves and said, mate, I want you to do this, this, and this. After a while, you're going to say, mate, let's do me a favour, shut up and leave me alone. Rugby's a bit like that now. You've got runners on the field all the time, haven't you? Guys talking to players. These guys are professional. Play the game. Let them play. And I think, Danny Cipriani came out as well a week last and saying, he's one of these guys who doesn't fit in. Because he's an instinctive player. Coaches don't like instinctive players because they can't control them. That's why they pick players for certain positions. So, again, it's going to be interesting. I know it's only one week in. A lot of things can happen. You could lose some star players. But realistically, the Irish are probably the form team. South Africa, still there. I mean, they are a very complete team. They've got so many good players. The French at home, if they're not going to win this World Cup, mate, they never will. Really, I mean, this is their time in the sun. But they are. It looks like that they have embraced the World Cup this year compared to 2007 when they were sort of kept away from the whole sort of bonanza and all that. So it looks like that they're actually matured a lot more. The All Blacks 24-0 down. Never seen that in my life against the South Africans. Like everything seemed to come in. A lot of teams wake up. We saw Fiji almost beat Wales. There's been a lot of criticism about the referee, but again, it's one week's finished. This is 1 week, so there's going to be a lot of interesting things. And I said, if you lose a couple of key players, what's the backup going to be? Are they going to be just as good, or will they struggle or change the way they want to play?
And in terms of Fiji themselves, they're of course Australia's next game. It was a slightly more impressive performance from Australia. Yes, as you say, maybe they should have beaten the Georgians by a bit more. What's your thoughts on the squad at the moment? They're sort of key players you're looking out for?
I think that I would put Mark, the winger, I'd put him at 13. I think he's a very good, because he runs really good angles. If you've noticed, when he runs, he's actually very hard to tackle. But we need somebody to create something out wide for our wingers. We've got Korobetti, who's a great winger, but he's got to go into the ruck 5 metres out to score tries. I want to see him one-on-one, and he made a really good run against Georgia on that angle. But, then something's got to happen from that. The back line at the moment is still working out. I don't know, will Gordon be the number 10 going into this quarters? At the moment in France, Eddie's got Foley. He's got James O'Connor over in Australia A, and he's got Little CeeLo, the other number 10. We've got 3 number 10s already over there. Eddie's smart the way he does things, but and Donaldson as well as a number 10. So, but the thing is, the more you go on, you've got to have those combinations. You can't just swap and change players week in, week out. Skelton, obviously, captain. It's not bad to win your first World Cup as captain against in the World Cup game. But I think they've just got to, some of the lineouts, they've just got to realise that the game of rugby is about the ball. If you haven't got it, you can't win. So cherish the ball more. And we did see that, the combination with Tate McDermott and Gordon, they need to play more. Then he brings on White, and White's more of a kicker, kicks the ball away a bit too much for us. And, without the ball, you can't really win.
And do you think that's partly down to sort of the management style, or is it more the players on the field that are making those decisions?
Yeah, look, I think that Eddie, he does what he wants, and I think if you speak to every player, he does that, It's very difficult to get a team 7 months out from a Rugby World Cup and get them to play what you want. Michael Checker in 2019 struggled because he didn't have the skilled players to play a running style, so he had to change to something different. And that's scary, because we won 2 World Cups before anyone else in the world won 2 World Cups. We lost 2003, we lost 2015, and we haven't won one since 2099. Sorry, 1999. So I think the way we've got to look at it is that, yes, it's great to build, but you've got to try and have a bit of consistency. Let the guys as you can. Don't just change because you want to change. I think the combinations are vital, especially when you get to those little quarterfinal games where one decision can change the whole game, and that's that's the experience, and that's why I mean that I think Tate McDermott's a great player. I think he keeps the opposition busy, that's what you need as a player. You got to keep the opposition guessing what you're going to do next. And if players know exactly what they do, it takes away a bit away from the pressure of their defence.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of keeping people on their toes, Craig Cooper's a big name that's been left out of the squad. Was that something that surprised you, or did you see it coming?
Yeah, look, I think the reason is because Craig did an Achilles last year, and I suppose that in the second Bledisloe Cup, the ball was he unfortunately knocked it on. There was a scrum and the penalty went New Zealand's way. So I think little things like that in big games are vital. Again, Eddie's he knows what he wants, and he probably thought, will Quade go the distance? I mean, we've got young number 10s. I said you've got Donaldson who plays 10 and 15. So you've got someone that covers that, and then you've got Callaway who's a fullback. We've got enough backs, but trying to fit them into the combination-wise is probably the problem at the moment. Quade's been around as well, so it's sad that it happened, and sad with Hooper as well, but you're there to win a World Cup, not to keep everyone happy.
Well, that's the thing. It's professional rugby at the end of the day, and it's the world's biggest occasion. Now, this is obviously a very young Australian side. I believe it is the youngest side out there. Do you think they're aiming for this World Cup, or is this going to be a strong squad in future? Yeah,
look, I think that, as again, you said it's the youngest team in the World Cup. Young teams don't really win World Cups. It's the experience, and I think if you look at some of the other teams, the way they go on about their business, it's very organised. They've been together for a while. And again, you get to the quarterfinals, mate, anything can happen. That's the beauty of rugby. You don't know who's going to turn up on the day. And it's the nerve factor, it's the experience. And, when you're young and free, great, you try things, but also you do some silly things. If you look at England, after losing to Fiji, they came and Argentina were nowhere in the game, and they got a lot of experienced players. And it might end up where England plays Australia in the quarters, which is going to be amazing because you've got obviously Eddie, and then you've got the assistant coach now coaching England. So it's made out to be a pretty good sort of quarterfinal setup. But again, you've got to take every game as you do. But my concern is that Australia's got Portugal before they go in the quarters. Now, no disrespect to Portugal, but I mean, Australia, on their day, they should be winning by 60, 70 points. Yeah. But the problem is the week after, then you play a quarter, you can't do the things you did against Portugal because all of a sudden the defence is better. It's a better structured team. That's why you need hard games going week in, week out. You need those hard games because when the pressure's on, you know how to react. If you know what I mean, it's no good playing. I suppose for Ireland to get rid of that game to 80 was great, but now the rest is going to be hard games, and I think that's you've got Scotland and South Africa. They're not going to be easy, so it actually gets them battle hard, I suppose, for the quarters and semis.
Yeah, of course. And in terms of these sort of quarters, semis, the final,
I'd be picking France to win. And the only reason is if you look at against the All Blacks, I mean, they just demonstrated, they just demolished them. And the All Blacks had no idea. But what I really enjoyed was the skill factor from the forwards, the way they passed the ball and they were looking for space instead of running at somebody. And obviously South Africa are a complete team as well, even though they struggled, but they won. Second half they came out and scored 2 tries within the first 10 minutes. That's a team. And then the rest of the game was sort of, okay, close up shop, we've done enough, let's just win the game. Yeah. But didn't really threaten. They didn't have, I think the number 13 for Scotland touched the ball in about the 78th minute and dropped it and said ball the whole game. And that's not a good way to play rugby, It's so the teams that actually try a few things and, they work or don't work, I mean, they're the ones who are going to keep on trying. Australia, again, who knows? I mean, we saw Fiji's a danger. And what's really helped the island teams this year is obviously they're playing in that the Super Rugby in Australia and New Zealand. It's a shame that Israel Folau's not playing for Tonga. It'd be great to see. He's a great talent. So there, and Ireland played Samoa 2 weeks ago and won 17-14. So some of those teams are going to scare a few people. But again, every game, you've just got to turn up and play. You can't sort of aim a game ahead. You've just got to say, right, this game, this is what we're going to do. And a lot of the coaches obviously been in this position before. They realise what they've got to do. But you've got to get better as well. You've got to get, some consistency going forward. You can't just go upwards and downwards, upwards. You've got to actually say, right, this is what we're going to do this week. We've got to get better and better in these sort of facets of play. The line out for Australia, like you can't get the ball thrown and then lose the ball. The ball's everything. So just little mistakes creep in, cost you big things in big games.
England's first game against Argentina, it was a big effort from the English in terms of sort of defensively. The Argentinians weren't allowed to play ball, and as a result, you saw I think there was like 13 odd knock-ons in however many minutes it was, and even in the Scotland game, like you say, number 13 touched the ball once, knocked it on, and that was all from a solid South African defence where they just didn't allow the Scottish to play. So, do you think these sort of defensive sides are going to have a bit more of an advantage in this tournament?
It's all about defence, really. It's about you got the ball, you try and score.
Brilliant.
You know what I mean? So that's why the defensive teams win, and that's where Ireland's rock solid. But again, no one's tested them doing something different. And I think the only team that can keep you guessing is probably France at the moment, because the way they play, they've got some great individuals. You look at New Zealand. Who's the player that you're going to go to if you look at that game against France? There was no one really stood up. I only made a really good run in the first 1 minute, but there was no one with him. He was isolated instead of looking around. If you have a look at a lot of the opening games, there's some really good individual stuff, but no team stuff. And teams win World Cups, not individuals. Little things like that change. So, look, I just think it's going to build, but again, it's so controlled by coaches these days. And if things change, and I remember in 2019, I think Ireland were playing Japan, and I was in London airport, and I think 20 minutes to go, I think Japan were winning pretty easy. So what did Ireland do for the next 20 minutes? They did exactly the same what they did for the first 60 minutes. They've got to try and get on the field, say, guys, this is not working. Let's change. But they can't do that because the coaches, that's the way they are.
Ireland do have, they're a very good side, but you wouldn't say they've got any standout Maverick-style players because they're all playing to one system. And if they haven't got plan B, like you say, then they're not going to be able to turn these scores around. So if they do go behind, then that's when they could be in trouble.
Now, that's why, and I wrote a book in 1991 on A Wing and a Prayer. In that book, I said, if we go professional, the game's not going to be good. I said it in 2003 again, because individuals stand out, like Cheslin Colby made a really good run as well but he had Fuff on the outside, didn't even look to pass. There's little things like that. You watch the guys make a break and they dive with the ball, and there's opportunities if you can anticipate. But again, it's a structured game, and that's where a lot of teams are going to struggle when you need to do something different and you put yourself under a lot of pressure. But that's where the skill factor comes in. And at the moment, the French are, they're actually playing the French style as we used to play against Serge Blanco, Jean-Baptiste Lafont, Frank Manel. Back in those days where everyone had a unique way of playing, but now, you get the jersey and change them at halftime. You wouldn't know if there was a different team because they all play the same.
Yeah, and funny enough, and I think that's a big thing for fans as well watching. When you've got these massive names, even you go back to sort of '99, Dominici. So he was a small lad, or you go slightly further on, Shane Williams. These players who do something a bit more out of the normal, that were a bit different to your standard players, they're the ones that get fans involved and fans interested. And obviously yourself back in the day. Just to give you an idea, like I started watching rugby in '99. I remember Scotland against New Zealand when it was, I think Scotland were wearing their orange kit. And you had obviously Jonah Lomo bouncing through everybody, running around people, and you had these players that were allowed to be individual. And obviously I think that's a big part of what rugby should be. And I don't know about you, but you can lose certainly a lot of viewers when it comes to making the game too regimental.
professionalism changed a lot because when we went professional in '96, the closest game to our game was rugby league.
Mm.
So everyone got rugby league defence coaches, and then it became a defensive game, not an attacking game. So I don't know if you watch rugby league in Australia, but rugby league in Australia in the 80s and 90s was played the way rugby's played now, because they're not spiralling the ball like we do. I mean, I don't know if you watched the games last week, but the amount of forward passes was ridiculous, and they didn't pick them up at all. But it happened in 2011 Rugby World Cup in New Zealand, where the forward passes were so many until the quarters, and they said, right, guys, no more forward passes. And all of a sudden, all these teams got pulled up, So, yeah, look, the rules make it difficult. But again, the referee for me is looking for a penalty. Now, the thing that it's when you watch, like you're on your own try line, there's nowhere to go. There's a right, and the referee says you're offside. I said, where are you supposed to go? You can't go anywhere. But they're looking for a penalty, and it's really frustrating. And teams know that. Teams know that they've got an advantage in the 22.5, and they got 22 phases later, and nothing happens. The referee, we haven't got. Let's go back to the penalty. Why don't we make it like basketball? You got three seconds to shoot in the circle. So in rugby, why don't you say, right, you've got 4 phases. Use it or lose it. You know what I mean? And you don't want to see a defence, on the line, defence. You know what I mean? It's supposed to be a world sport. We are the 3rd biggest sport in the world. And we've got these things like, like a lot of people talking about the Fiji game, with the yellow card and the way the world, like, I didn't really watch all the game, but I mean, it's frustrating when you hear people saying, well, the referee's got so much to offer to a game. But unfortunately, he's been adjudicated by someone in the grandstand as well. But there's so many laws. The biggest thing with the scrum, let the scrum alone. Make sure the referee doesn't go anywhere near a scrum. Because every time he's near a scrum, it happens. Let the players play. Let them play. They're old enough. They've been international players. They've trained properly. Let them come together. And maybe we won't get the 3-minute scrums. It takes much time. And lineouts, walking to lineouts. I mean, is that professional? People pay money to go and watch. They don't want to see guys walking. They don't want to see the scrum collapsing. They want action, and they want to see these individual players burn up the oval. That's what they want. They want something exciting to happen, and here's the opportunity.